In this edition of the News Review, Russia has accused Germany of stalling efforts to probe the alleged poisoning of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova says Germany is calling for an investigation into Navalny's case and at the same time hampering the process. The remark came after German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas urged Russia to provide an explanation about the alleged poisoning or face sanctions. Maas said Berlin will discuss possible sanctions with European Union members if Moscow fails to do so. Navalny was flown to Germany for treatment last month after falling ill while aboard a domestic flight. Germany claims that his blood tests show that he was poisoned with a nerve agent. Moscow has denied any involvement, insisting there is so far no evidence of foul play. Now, to discuss that further, we're joined by our guest, Greg Simons, author and researcher, and also Marcus Papadopoulos, a publisher and editor, joining us live right now. Let's begin with Mr. Simons. Mr. Simons, we hear a lot about this Novichok. Last time it was another Russian ex-spy and his daughter that Europeans claimed were poisoned with this nerve agent, whereas we do know that it's not just Russia that has access to this nerve agents, and NATO has done a lot of research using this nerve agents and how it affects people.
Absolutely. I mean, it was the United States who disassembled the production of facility, and I think it was in Central Asia, and brought with them the scientists who were developing it. I mean, this has become a standard narrative, apparently, that anyone who gets poisoned, it's Novichok. So this seems to be part of their communication strategy. Well, it's part of information warfare because it's an assertion rather than something which is concretely proven.
Let's bring in Mr. Papadopoulos. What are your views regarding this nerve agents and how it has been always blamed for these kinds of poisoning?
Let me first of all say that the incident concerning Alexei Navalny must be seen against the background of a geopolitical actuality, namely that at present the world is witness to an ongoing and concerted political, economic, media and PR war against Russia, a war which has intensified ever since the 2014 crisis in Ukraine. Now, turning to the details concerning the incident involving Navalny, firstly, there is no political reason whatsoever for the Kremlin to assassinate Navalny, because Navalny's standing in Russian society is negligible. Indeed, his popularity is so minimal amongst all strands of Russian society that it is simply ludicrous for anyone to say that he is a political challenge to President Putin. Secondly, there is no economic sense in the Kremlin attempting to assassinate Navalny, because that would be inevitably most detrimental to the Nord Stream project, a project which the Kremlin very much needs to be unaffected by anything, because the Kremlin needs the revenue from that. Thirdly, if a chemical agent, for example, Novichok, was used to try and assassinate Alexei Navalny, then you don't have to be a scientist to realize that inevitably, and especially within the confines of an aircraft, that other people would have been infected, because Novichok, and indeed any other chemical agent, is extremely contagious. But none of the other passengers sitting adjacent to Navalny were infected. None of the cabin crew, for example, stewardesses, were infected. Therefore, it is implausible that a chemical agent was used to try and assassinate him. And also, why are the German authorities, which are at the end of the day strategic allies to America, why are they not allowing Russian scientists and medical doctors to travel to Germany to explore for themselves the findings of German scientists and German medical doctors? That is most disconcerting. Finally, I would say this: Germany is a strategic ally to America. And when America wants Germany to do something, regrettably, the Germans relent. And we saw that in 2014, when the Americans were piling enormous pressure on the EU to place sanctions on the Russian Federation. Germany did not want to do that. Merkel did not want to do that. She did not want a rupture in political and economic ties with Russia, but nonetheless, the German elite relented. And therefore, it is conceivable that the Americans are dictating to the German authorities what to say to the world about the incident concerning Navalny.
Thank you very much, Mr. Papadopoulos, for all those details, those elaborations. I would like to pick on one and address Mr. Simons. Let's discuss the Nord Stream project, which is, as Mr. Papadopoulos also mentioned, very vital to Russia. And now Germany is threatening to sanction Russia using this poisoning as an excuse. And this will definitely affect the Nord Stream project. What are your views regarding that?
Well, I mean, as Marcus said, I mean, this is another attempt. The US tried to sanction companies which were building Nord Stream. That failed. So now they try something more emotional. And one would add further to the analysis: why would Russia allow Navalny to travel to Germany for medical treatment if, in fact, they had poisoned him? This is idiotic, because it is going against their interests. And as has been stated, he's negligible. So there are two factors in this. There's the domestic politics, where the US has been trying to interfere with Russia and promote Navalny as some kind of leader of the opposition, which he is not. And the second one is the geo-economic factor. That is to put an end to Nord Stream and give the US a chance to corner the European market in energy.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Papadopoulos, your final thoughts. That was quite an interesting point Mr. Simon actually raised, that if Mr. Navalny was poisoned by the Russians, why would they allow him to be treated in Germany in the first place?
Absolutely. I concur entirely with what the other guest has just said. Once again, you don't need to be trained. You don't need to be a detective to realize that if the Kremlin had attempted to assassinate Navalny, then why on earth would they allow him to travel to Germany, one of America's most important or strategic allies in the world? It is simply fanciful to believe that the Kremlin would have made such a mistake. No. As I said moments ago, there is a very vicious, ongoing, concerted campaign being waged against Russia by the West, principally, of course, America and Britain. Why? Because Russia in 2020 is a superpower, and it is that which forms the nucleus for the West's campaign against Russia, because America and Britain do not want any threats of any kind whatsoever against Western global supremacy. And in Mr. Navalny, the Russian public see the West's liberal democratic model, which is a degenerate, cancerous model. It is a risk to countries, not just such as Russia, but also China, politically, economically, culturally, and spiritually. And that is why the Russian public have no interest whatsoever in Mr. Navalny.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Simons, your final thoughts, please. We're running out of time. We have about 2 minutes. Do you agree with Mr. Papadopoulos that in 2020, Russia is a superpower?
Well, absolutely. This has been something they've been trying to stop. And if we go back to 1997, I mean, Brzezinski and his idea of controlling US global hegemony. I mean, this is what they're trying to do, to break down any potential challenges to the US unipolar order, which the UK absolutely and utterly assists.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greg Simons, author and researcher, and Mr. Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor of Politics First. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your elaborations, and thanks to all of our viewers for following this edition of the News Review.